Welcome to Enchanted Lore. In today's video, we want to talk about some of the tools we've used to introduce family or children to RP and adventure. The first one that I would like to talk about is a book series by Joe Deaver known as The Lone Wolf. So this one, technically, in here at the very beginning, it does have its own set of rules in which you can kind of create your character and keep track of his equipment and everything you have as you go through the adventure and make your choices and what have you. Now, another way that I like to do to kind of simplify this sort of thing is kind of have where we keep track of the inventory, but as you go through the adventure, let's say you make a mistake and it leads to the death of your character. Well, then we kind of rewind back and have a Groundhog Day sort of moment in which then you go back and you say, okay, when you were presented choices, you went down the left path. Do you instead want to go to the center or the right path? Right? So that's one way to do it. So you could do it the original way, which is then a fun little, adventure. It's all planned out for you. It has where you flip and go to the different sections, which guides you, to which decision you make. Very fun. Or you could kind of do it in my method where you kind of read it to them, make them have choices, and then you continue throughout the adventure. Like I said, it's a nice fun series in which you can pick up and enjoy. The next one that we could introduce you to is going back to one of my favorites, which is using Paizo's Pathfinder. So many years ago, for one of their free RPG days sort of thing, they created a free module called We Be Goblins. And they also made a We Be Goblins 2. And so they're still available for free for download as PDF on their website. It is compatible with the first edition of Pathfinder. I think they're working on a 2E version compatible, but I think that one costs money. So anyway, the first version, you can still get it for free. When I did that, I noticed I had for some reason, it wasn't working quite right in getting into my cart with using Edge and Chrome, but it could be because of how I have certain add-on blockers, but I was successful with using Firefox. So either way, that's just a little caveat. But going back to the adventure, right? So it is a one-shot sort of simple thing. They provide the character sheets for you in which you play as goblins. So you have 4 characters that you can play, and you can have this adventure in which you are set on and tasked by your goblin chief. And, well, as you can imagine, you're playing mischievous goblins, and how these things that are described to you as like so horrendous, that to a normal adventurer in the D&D/Pathfinder world, it would be insignificant. But to a goblin, it is so incredible. And so it's silly. And so that would be something that I would recommend that perhaps you look into and see and get your toes wet in either, RP of the sorts for the Pathfinder, rule system, or even just using that sort of thing and modifying it for like D&D or what have you, because it is still a fun concept that you can use that's already prepared for your family, right? The next thing that we'll move on to is this, which is known as Mouse Ritter. It's a very interesting series. I thought it was a very interesting concept, right? And that is where, you play as a mouse character. So think of like Secret of the Nim sort of thing, or other sort of adventures where you play as a little mouse going on the thing. And as you RP this, You have where, it's a grand world. You do not have a lot of hit dice. You are not, going to like destroy, demons and all this stuff. It's more like, what is it like in the little world of an adventure mouse as he goes and he explores? Maybe he finds like another friendly mouse out there, or maybe he goes and fights a spider. Just kind of little, just more kid friendly adventures. I would say the rule book is very simplified. If you like crunchy and stuff like that, which, it's not very friendly to have stuff too crunchy, then you would probably go with some other system. But with this, it's very simplified, and it encourages to have more freedom and just kind of do things, right? Like they give you to where, yes, you have this simple character sheet. You kind of help pick your background and how does your mouse look like? What's kind of their background? What kind of equipment? And then you just kind of start your adventure, and then, you just build and do your things as what it was, right? And one of the adventures I had where the people had to go and they met this kind of weird witch mouse. And, to help them, she wanted a whole bunch of silk, but spider silk. And so then the adventurers had to go and to find where some spiders were and try to gather some spider silk. But because of that, they now anger the spiders, so it's going to cause a fight with them and stuff like that. And another adventure, just for silliness sake, right, was where they went to this one cave that they had to explore, and they ran into a skunk. And well, what do they do? Because the skunk is hiding treasure, but now he's stinking up the place. It's just, you have the ridiculous, you have the freedom, and this is a fun way to introduce family or children to adventure and RPG. Another one, which kind of shifts a little bit differently, and I know it's a board game, it's this 5-minute dungeon, right? Which is a great game for adults. Right. But the reason why I brought this one up was that I like the idea of that it gave some of the concepts, because you play as like a wizard, you play as like, a paladin or what have you, maybe, a ranger. And the goal is to kind of do this dungeon crawl where you fight a bunch of monsters and you try to fight the boss and stuff like that. Well, when I introduced this to some younger children and stuff, I modified the rules to where it wasn't 5 minutes, but I added the hype, and it'd be like, oh no, now you're going to face this evil monster, whatever the boss was. But first, you had to do this, defeat these guys. And so, everybody had like their car, and then they had the teamwork and be like, oh yes, this is how they're going to do this and that, which is kind of an important element and aspects to a little bit of RP. The fun, the adventure, the dungeon crawl, the teamwork and stuff. These are key elements. And so, like I said, I know this one is kind of loose fitting in there, but it was kind of just something that I built upon and played with. And I feel there's probably other ones that you guys can recommend. What did you guys do to kind of introduce your family or children to the concept of role-playing or D&D or whatever? So we would like to hear from you. That's it for today, and thank you for watching.